Good evening, everyone. This week's Parsha is Parshas Vayetzei, Tavshin Pei Gimel. We're going to focus on, towards the end of the Parsha, this Parsha is where Yaakov leaves his parents' home, goes to Aram, marries Rachel and Leah, Bill and Zilpah, has his family, most of his family, and he stays for over 20 years. He stays around 20 years in Lavan's house to work for Lavan, and he builds up himself, his own livelihoods for his family, his own belongings for his family. And eventually it comes time for him to go back to Eretz Yisrael, to his father. And in Parak Lamed Aleph, Pasuk Daled through Tez Zayin, chapter 31, verses 4 through 16, Yaakov calls for Rachel and Leah to the field where he's working, and he tells them how he sees that their father Lavan does not show the same pleasure with him as he used to. And he goes through how Lavan switched and tried to trick him so many times with what would be his payment, for his work. And how Hashem had always helped them to make sure that he should get what he deserves. And he ends off saying that Hashem appeared to him. And Hashem says to him, Ata kum tzei min haaretz hazos, now arise and leave this land, v'shuv el haaretz moladetecha, and return to the land, your birthplace. Hashem is telling him to return back to Yitzchak, to go back to Eretz Yisrael. So, what are Rachel and Leah's response? Atan Rachel v'Leah v'tamar nolai. Rachel and Leah responded to him and said, do we have any more portion or inheritance in our father's home? We're considered like strangers to him. And he's also devoured and eaten up all our money. For all the money that Hashem saved from our father, it's for us and our children. And now, whatever Hashem tells you, do. So it's very interesting that when Yaakov tells them about how Hashem tells him to go back to Eretz Yisrael, so we would think the response would be, if Hashem wants, then that's what we should do. But that's not what they answer. They answer and they say that basically it's not worth sticking around here anymore. Our Father doesn't care about us. We'd be left with nothing if we stay here. So, and now do what Hashem tells you to do. Sounds like because we have nothing here to gain, therefore do what Hashem says. And if we'd have what to gain here, then they wouldn't be agreeable. That's very hard to understand. If Hashem tells Yaakov to go back to Eretz Yisrael, then that's what they need to do. Why did they just say, do what Hashem tells you to do? And their response implies that do what Hashem says to do because, we have nothing to gain here. We only have what to gain we have nothing to gain by staying here. We only lose out by staying here. So do what Hashem says. Sounds like other than that, you wouldn't do what Hashem says. So Rav Moshe Feinstein gave an answer, but a very important principle when it comes to how we approach, how we serve Hashem. And that is that Rachel and Leah were not saying that do what Hashem says because we have nothing to gain by staying here. Even if we would have what to gain by staying here, of course, listen to what Hashem wants you to do. But the point is, there's a very important principle in Torah observance, is that ideally, optimally, our approach to our service to Hashem should not be that, it's difficult it takes a lot of sacrifice and it's not easy to observe the Torah, but I'm going to do it because I know it's the right thing, and I know that there'll be a lot of reward in store for me in the world to come. So to keep Shabbos and to keep kosher, it's very difficult, but I'm still going to do it. And I know that although it's going to create difficulties for me in this world, but I know in Olam Haba, in the world to come, I will be greatly rewarded for it. Meaning, observing Torah in this world doesn't necessarily give you a good life in this world, but it's worth sacrificing it for what I have to gain in the world to come. So Rav Moshe Feinstein said that's not the way our approach to Torah observance should be. Our approach to Torah observance should be that we have nothing to lose and only what to gain from observing the mitzvahs of the Torah. And not just in the world to come, but in this world. That if I give up, that if I keep Shabbos, I'm not going to lose from it. If I keep kosher, whatever else, I go to davening on time, I go to daven in shul, and I don't go rushing out to take care of other things in place of going to shul, or I make sure that I learn every day, and even if it seems to be at some kind of a sacrifice for other things, our belief, our emunah, our trust and our faith in Hashem is that we have nothing to lose from observing the mitzvahs. We have only what to gain. And even if we don't necessarily see openly what we're gaining, at the end of the day, a life of Torah observance is a fulfilling life, is a life of satisfaction, is a life of happiness. So again, we don't lose out from the mitzvahs, and we gain a happy and satisfied life. And sometimes we get to see what we really gain, what we gain, that we don't lose out and we gain from from observing the Torah. To go ahead and say that I'm going to sacrifice from my life that's not the real way of looking at things. Now, practically speaking, that is how things are going to be sometimes. And clearly, there are things that we see as challenges to what we need in our lives. And it's not easy to give it up in order to observe the Torah. And our approach is going to be that it's difficult to do, and still we're ready to do it. And that's going to be a very natural first step of how to do things. But what we have to work on, in our emunah, our faith in Hashem, we have to work on that. Yeah, initially it seems this definitely does come across difficult. But we don't lose out from a mitzvah. We never lose out from observing what Hashem wants from us. Even if we don't see it, we don't lose out. We gain, and we actually gain a satisfying and pleasurable life. That whatever we're doing, that whatever it seems to be sacrificing from our lives is not a sacrifice, because we're never going to lose from observing the Torah, and we only gain, and we gain a life of satisfaction and happiness. What Rachel and Leah were responding to Yaakov was that they were saying that not because we have nothing to lose and only to gain from leaving here, that's why you should listen to what Hashem said. But rather, they were right away bringing out this idea. They could identify right away what it was, the good and what Hashem was doing for them. And it's quite possible that it still wasn't so easy for them to do. After all, this was where they had lived all their lives. Now married to Yaakov, working on their lovin'. It's not like they didn't have a life. They had a life. And maybe it wasn't so easy to go ahead and leave it all. But they were expressing that to them it was very clear what it is that this mitzvah has in store for us. That this mitzvah has that listening to Hashem's command for you to go back to Eretz Yisrael will pose no loss. It will only pose gain. And therefore now we do the will of Hashem. Not because otherwise we would do the will of Hashem, but rather they were right away expressing their understanding. They could see very clearly that what it was that this mitzvah, what it was that listening to what Hashem was wanting for them to do right now, which go back to Eretz Yisrael, that it was clear to them what they would gain from it, how it was good for them. And not because that was the basis for listening to the word of Hashem, but it was the recognition, it was the understanding that whatever Hashem wants for them is for their best and for their good, and not just for their good in the future, but for their good right here and now. And they could see it. Not always can we see it as clear as they did, but the lesson that they taught us here is that our approach to serving Hashem is that listening to what Hashem, following the word of Hashem, is what's going to give us a good life here. There will be times that we'll have the merit to see how good it is for us, that what the benefit, how good it is for us, what we're benefiting in this lifetime from listening to Hashem. Sometimes we'll see that very clearly. Sometimes we may not see it as clear. At least our emunah, our faith, our trust is that the mitzvahs that we do never cause us a loss. They give us a satisfaction in this life, and that there definitely will be times we're going to see how we didn't lose and what it is that we gained from listening to the word of Hashem. But not because that's the basis of why we listen to Hashem. We listen to Hashem because even when things feel hard and we don't see the benefit, we do it anyway. That's what we have to do. But what we have to work on is that faith and that trust that whenever we do a mitzvah, we never lose from it. We only gain from it, and we gain a life full of satisfaction and pleasure, not just in the world to come, but in this lifetime. Have a wonderful evening.